SOP 213, tag, you're it.
It's the School of Podcasting's morning announcements. Here's Dave Jackson.
All right, welcome to the School of Podcasting's morning announcements. I am your personal podcast coach, Dave Jackson, thanking you very much for tuning in. I know you have a busy schedule, and I appreciate that you come to spend 5 to 15 minutes with me. If you'd like more of me, it's very easy. Our website is schoolofpodcasting.com. You can email me, dave@schoolofpodcasting.com, or you can call in your comments, courtesy of podcastvoicemail.com. It's toll free, 888-563-3228. Of course, the other way you can communicate, you can leave a comment out at our blog. Everything we talk about, you can find at shownotes.schoolofpodcasting.com. And before we get to today's show, which is tags in WordPress, we do have a voicemail from Dan from Edgy Podcast Reviews. Now, if you're looking to get your podcast reviewed, I highly recommend Dan and Jenna. I'm actually now listening to Just Your Show. It was one of the few shows they gave 5 stars to, and I'm finding good podcasts to listen to thanks to Dan and Jenna. They have a Jana. I always want to say Jenna. It's Jana. Or if you're Dan, it's Jana. But they have this criteria, Edgy Podcast Reviews. It is a bit of a line to get reviewed, but they're very consistent. And check them out. And here is what Dan had to say.
Hey, Dave. This is Daniel from Edgy Podcast Reviews. And just finished listening to your most recent episode. Sorry, I can't bring it up, but you were just sharing your numbers of your downloads, just talking about your various shows and donations and how difficult it is to really get anything from that. And and that's my son saying hey. And he said, hang on. But yeah, I just appreciate your openness, and you've always been great about that, and just think we could use more of it. And also, just to let you know that your previous episode, where I think you had got a droid, and you're talking with your wife on the phone, man, that blew me away of how clear of a call that was, in comparison to having a phone line adapter and all this stuff, how simple of a setup you had and how effective it was. So just want to give you feedback regarding that. Keep doing a great show, and thank you for all you're doing in podcasting. Take care.
And it's very funny. First of all, Dan, thank you very much for calling in. I really appreciate that, because I had somebody else email. I said, I didn't get much out of that episode. So it's kind of funny that one person's trash is another person's treasure. But yeah, I don't know why we guard our stats. So I guess, maybe because it's not about numbers, it's about influence. And if I had 50 people that I was constantly emailing back and forth, and they helped create the podcast. I actually have one of my podcasts about weight loss. I actually have now enlisted one of my listeners to kind of be a reporter. She's going to go try a product, and then I'm going to call her, and she's going to be a guest on the show, but she's just a listener. I'm getting my community involved with that, and so it's really about influence. And I think if you can really contact and really connect with, not so much contact, if you can really connect with your audience, that's much more key than having a very wide audience. In fact, another Dan, emailed me that said, I didn't get much out of that podcast. And he asked me a question about if I had to do it again, what things would I change? And that's next week's podcast. Speaking of that, today is actually March 12th. And what's cool about this is something I've said before. People say, Dave, how do you do so many podcasts? I'm recording this on March 12th. It's kind of evergreen material. And in theory, this is going to come out at the end of March. So if you get a ton of material, don't spill it all in one episode. I like my episodes to be somewhere between 10 and 15 to 20 minutes. And so, Dan, thank you very much for that. And as for my numbers, yeah, it's kind of weird. I just don't care. I know, I guess as a musician, I always know, because I'm a pretty decent guitar player. I always tell people I can hold my own, but I always know there's somebody better. There's a guy that comes through this town called Colin John. Phenomenal guitar player. And so Colin can just blow my doors off. And on the other hand, I go out and see some bands and I go, yeah, that guy is not that good. So consequently, in podcasting, we all have our Colin John. It's called Leo Laporte, who has like 8 bazillion listeners. And then you got other people that have 20. But again, if you had 20 people that you were really connected with, that's more important. So I don't really care much about numbers. And if you want to share your numbers, by all means, 888-563-3228. Because also realize that the nicher your podcast, if you're doing, cross-country ballroom dancing podcast, probably not that many people doing cross-country ballroom dancing, but, the 6 that are going to love the podcast, right? So keep that in mind. But that leads us, and if you've ever wondered why, because you hear the music in the background now, I'm going to stop now. The music's going to fade up. That's my way, in the event I'm ever talking about a subject that you go, don't care, just listen for the music to come up. And that's my signal that there's a new topic, which is what we're going to do now. All right, when you're writing a WordPress post, and if you're brand new to podcasting, this is where we talk about all things podcasting. And today we're going to talk about the software that I recommend to make your podcast, and that is WordPress. WordPress is a free software that you can install in literally seconds. My choice for web hosting is HostGator. If you go to schoolofpodcasting.com/hosting, you can go into their control panel and install WordPress. I think it's about 5 to 10 clicks. And when you write a post, which is where you put basically a podcast is audio or video that's tied to a WordPress post. It's really that simple, or a PDF. We'll be talking about that in a second. And there are these things called tags. And you can kind of think of it like this. When you read a book, if you're especially reading a reference book, in the back there's an index that has all these terms that were probably used somewhere in the book. And you can go to that. You can go to that index, find that word, find out what page it's on, and go to that page and see that word or topic used in a page or a sentence or a paragraph or something like that. That's kind of what the tags are in WordPress. And what happens, you can actually, if you wanted to, you could set up your blog to list all of your tags. It's called a tag cloud. Why, I don't know. But you can actually have your tags listed there, so people could read through could basically look through your index and say, oh, wow, here's a link here to Alice Cooper. I like Alice Cooper, and you click on that, right? So I don't have a tag list on my website. I don't get that creative, but I happen to do some work for a member of the School of Podcasting and noticed that they didn't use tags at all. And so if you go out to our website, shownotes.schoolofpodcasting.com, I went into my stats of my web hosting, again, which in this case is HostGator, and I think it's AW Stats. And you can go in and view all of the files that have been viewed that month. And I did, and there's a thing at the top that you can filter it. So I said, filter it, anything that has an address /tag, show me. And I have a graphic out at the website, but I mean, it was literally, okay, it's like one of these, like when you go on your mouse, that brrr, 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 and you're scrolling down, it was like 4 of those, like brrr, 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 maybe even 5. Brrr. That's how many hits I received from tags. Google realizes, or Google loves text. That's why you write show notes. That's why you write a paragraph about what's in your shows, because Google can't index audio, but it can index words. And apparently it likes tags because on one hand, you'll see the ones that are listed in this graphic, and you don't have to go look at this, but a lot of them are like one. I got 1 hit for Dan Class. And I got 1 hit for, I think it was RSS feed or something like that. These are all these tags, but there were tons of them. So if you're looking, and now realize Google brings traffic, which brings eyeballs. Eyeballs hopefully catch the player for your website. Click on it and listen, and then subscribe. So if you're not using tags, it's like adding an index to your podcast. And if you want, like I said, you can show that on your page. That might actually help your listeners, depending on what you're talking about and what's your topic. But it also, it puts more food on the plate for Google to come and eat. All right, my next little topic. If you listen to this show for a while, you know that some of my podcasts are just flat out experiments. And I, in the last year, got married, graduated, and I went from being a podcast consultant. I was a podcast consultant to put myself through college, and the School of Podcasting is here to scratch my teaching itch. And I'm actually now a corporate trainer. I actually don't make a living doing podcasting. I actually pay my student loans with podcasting now. And making a long story short, I have less time in my life than I did because I now work 40 hours a week, and that's fine. Some people are like, oh, it's a shame you had to. No. My goal was to go to school to get back to being a teacher. I love to teach. I love to help people, and I'm now doing that on a daily basis. And thanks to my bachelor's degree in education, I'm now getting paid well to do it, which is a beautiful thing. I still do the School of Podcasting. School of Podcasting isn't going away. Podcast Mechanic, the consulting thing, it depends on what you want. I don't do a lot of podcast consulting. I consult with the members of the School of Podcasting. That's about how I do it. But getting to the point, Dave, please, one of my podcasts, at least one, has to go. Not enough time, things like that. In fact, this podcast might actually switch to a bi-weekly format. But right now, like I said, I'm 2 weeks ahead. I might not have to do that. But Weekly Web Tools at weeklywebtools.com is a podcast that I started out for DIY webmasters, number one. And I'm going to talk about this in next week's show. Really, really avoid putting the word daily, weekly, monthly, any kind of time-based word in the title of your podcast. I would advise not to do it unless you have about 90 shows in the can. But Weekly Web Tools is a great show, especially the early episodes. It's getting harder and harder to find web tools that I haven't really already talked about. It's kind of like, hey, here's another web meeting. It's not WebEx, it's DimDim, or, here's an affiliate tool or things like that. So it's good stuff, but it's getting harder and harder to produce. So what I'm going to do with this as an experiment, and I'll find out, I'll be recording that episode right after this one, is Weekly Web Tools is going to be turned into a podcast that's not audio or video. I know what you're saying. You can send PDF documents down an RSS feed because most of my listeners are probably subscribed via iTunes. And I'm going to send out an episode that talks about a web tool, and then I'm going to say, if you only listen to this podcast on an iPod, you're going to be deeply disappointed because the PDF file does not transfer to an iPod unless you, I guess, manually drag it or something. And I'm going to say, if that's the case, subscribe to this blog/podcast in an RSS reader because you can see everything I'm talking about, whether it's blog lines or your Google Reader, things like that. And then I will send the blog's postings as a PDF. I'll attach a PDF of the blog post so that if they're in iTunes, it will still go down there, and I'll be putting tracking devices in any of the links in the PDF to see if anybody is clicking on them, because after all, your time is valuable, my time is valuable, and if I'm sending these PDFs down through and nobody's clicking on them, and I'll also be tracking to see how many times they've been downloaded, things like that, then I'm not going to be doing the PDF. I'll just turn it into a blog. And in reality, that probably means it will be the death of Weekly Web Tools. But we'll see. So that's a new experiment I'm going to be playing with. I'm going to take one of my podcasts, turn it into a blog. Because right now, speaking of numbers, I think I said that one had 153 downloads about per episode, where in its heyday, it was getting like 800. When it first started out, like I said, it was great, but it's really hard to find good content. When I do now, and that's where I wish it wasn't weekly. I wish it was just web tools, and every time I found a really cool one for affiliate marketing that I'll be talking. It's wait a minute, I'll just give it to you here. Skimlinks.com, I think is the name of it. If you're into affiliate marketing, check that out. So that's where I'm going with that, and I will update you on that and see how the downloads go and see if it works, if it doesn't work, things like that. But I thought, hey, before I kill this podcast, let me turn it into a podcast that's just a PDF, because PDFs will transfer into iTunes, but they don't transfer to an iPod. So if you only listen to podcasts on iTunes and not on your computer, yeah, that's why I got to let the listeners know of that. So I will keep you posted on that. So there you go. Thanks again to Daniel from edgypodcastreviews.com for your comments. I try to be as transparent as I can here. I really, I do podcasting. I do this. I love podcasting. I love helping people. That's why I have the School of Podcasting. If you need some help with podcasting, that really is, if you want access to me, that's really kind of the place you got to go now. We are doing I can't say that. By the time you listen to this, the webinar is probably already over, but go to schoolofpodcasting.com/webinars to check our schedule. We do live webinars that are free. Why? Because I don't care. I want to help people, and that helps me get content for the show. It actually helps people go, hey, Dave really is a nice guy, and they've signed up for the School of Podcasting. That's why I do free webinars, and they're fun. So if you are looking to start a podcast, please come see me. It's the schoolofpodcasting.com. If you'd just like to contact me and say, hey, again, email dave@schoolofpodcasting.com. You can call in your comments, courtesy of podcast voicemail, 888-563-3228. You can leave a comment at the post. And did I do email, voicemail? Yeah, that's pretty much it. All right. Thank you very much for tuning in. And until next week, class dismissed.